This week, Hamilton City Council unanimously voted to renovate Iverwood Stadium for the upcoming PanAm Games and the Ticats. And joining us now to make sense of it all is Nick Bontis, an award-winning professor from the DeGroote School of Business. Nice to have you with us again.
Happy Friday, Taz.
Thank you. Talk about an 11th hour deal. I mean, we had the provincial government stepping in with $22 million. Had this not happened, this would be a very, very different situation. So what do you think Hamilton Council needs to learn from this?
Well, we can learn a few things, including that there is such a thing as a Hail Mary pass at the end of the game. With a touchdown left to go, and that's what happened here. I took away three things primarily that we could learn. The first thing is with regards to collaboration. It seems for the last year or so that the conflict between the Ticats and the City Council, it was being played out in the media, it was being played out at the Economic Summit, it was just always being played out, and there should have never been a conflict. They should have collaborated, gotten into the same room, and had the discussion. And it only seemed that the last 4 or 5 days before the ultimate deadline that they were actually talking to each other. Second thing I learned, start early. Why did we have to wait till about 3 days left before this whole thing went down? We should have started this a year ago, and we could have chilled out and not been so stressed over the last several months. And the final thing that I learned is, let's be careful with what we wish for. Now we're fixing up Iverwood, but one of the big costs of fixing up Iverwood is adding all those new parking spots, which means Brian Timmis Stadium might go the dodo bird. And a lot of people don't realize that Brian Timmis Stadium represents one of Ontario's best soccer fields in the province. We're going to have to make that up somehow. I personally am a big soccer fan. I play at Brian Timmis a lot. We can't afford to lose soccer fields in addition to having this construction go ahead.
Very interesting. Okay, good recap. Well, let's talk about internet billing now, because this is one a lot of people have had an eye on this week. CRTC deciding it's going to delay its controversial ruling on that billing while it reviews its decision. And I think ultimately it means that it's the question of whether major internet providers can limit how much we download. And if they do, that means it costs us more. So this does not look good for consumers.
No, it doesn't. And, props to Prime Minister Harper for actually causing a little bit of a stink here on behalf of the average internet user in Canada. I can't believe the CRTC was even thinking of doing this, or that they even have the authority or power to do this. When I go on the internet, I want unfettered access to the world's information. It's called the democratization of information for a reason, to actually limit me and to force me to pay. Could you imagine going to YouTube and saying, I don't know if I should download this video and watch it or not, because it's going to cost me 35 cents. People can't have that stifling bottleneck. It's going to stifle innovation.
And I think we forget how much we use the internet.
That's right.
We use it to talk to people, to Skype, to Netflix, to
and you don't think of the cost, do you, Taz?
Not at all. But I might start thinking about the cost.
Well,
if they were to make it more expensive.
Because, flat fee to me means flat fee. I'll pay the money. It's here's the metaphor. I'm going to pay $30 a month to go to the library so I can study stuff. Oh, by the way, when you get into the library, you're only allowed to read 25 pages. Anything after that, we're also going to ding you some cost per page that you're going to read. It's just something that people aren't used to. And you know what? In Canada, we're already paying way too much for internet charges, in my opinion.
If unlimited internet usage is the norm worldwide, how are we going to put ourselves back, I think, and make a disadvantage, or it's like handicapping yourself?
Well, we can't handicap ourselves, and what we mustn't forget, Taz, is that we have what's called bimodal distribution in internet usage. Very simple term. It just means that there's two peaks of usage. You have the people on the low end who only check their email, surf the web a little bit, maybe listen to a couple songs. And then you have people way on the far end. These are the ones that are going to be using Netflix, that make videos, download music, people that play Xbox Live in the middle of the night. So you're trying to appease these two ends of the spectrum with one rule, and it shouldn't be the case. Let's have discriminant pricing. Let's have pricing for the average user. And if you do want to be that person that's going to use up 100 gigs a month, let's have special pricing for you too.
Really quickly, I know it's hard to really give us an average, but how much do you think the average consumer, and you did talk about the two tiers, would end up paying? Maybe you could break it down to the high-level users and the low-level users.
Well, I think on average right now we're probably paying upwards of maybe $30 or $40 for unlimited internet access. Not the really highest speed, but maybe $30, $40 a month seems to be the normal residential rate. If you're a really big power user, I think you'd be willing to pay $100. Let's face it, you're the one that's on the web all the time, hogging up the broadband access for everybody else.
Now, if you're following this decision, it was supposed to go into effect March 1st, but the CRTC, again, has put off the decision until May 1st, one we will definitely revisit. And speaking of the CRTC, this week, holding hearings over Canada's biggest communications giant, and that would be BCE. Bell's parent company, taking over CTV Globe Media. And we're hearing the word conglomerate a lot. Takeover. This cannot be good for consumers.
No, I mean, think of all the wonderful assets they have. They have CSI, American Idol, Big Bang, sports, the Olympics. I mean, CTV's got some really cool assets. And you know what? If BCE takes over, what they're going to do is they're going to have the rights of those assets to then push them on to cell phones. And that's what they're thinking about right now. This whole new era of tablets with the Playbook coming out and the iPad. How can we push new TV content now through that new distribution network? But here's the problem. TELUS, Cogeco, Shaw, they're upset because they know that BCE is not going to allow them to replay an episode of Big Bang Theory, for example,
well, this is
through
what
their network.
Cogeco's cable president and CEO was saying. Ultimately, Canadian consumers risk footing the bill for concentration and vertical integration. So, long and short of it, will we end up paying more if this takeover is allowed?
Absolutely, in my opinion.
Yeah?
Prices will go up because they will have now absolutely put their arms around some of the best content that we have, not only in Canada, but in the U.S. as well.
Speaking of prices, Capital Economics says Canadian homes could lose as much as a quarter of their value once the interest rates start to rise. That is astonishing. So what if you are, you've remortgaged your house and you're trying to finance a business or something else? How is that going to affect you, if at all?
It's going to affect you big time if the value of the underlying asset drops 25%. But you know what? Let me step back for a second. I don't believe in this thing at all. This is one of those reports. I'm taking a look at it with a grain of salt. You know, this organization here, what are they called here? Capital Economics. You know, they're a private company. They do this type of research. You know, sometimes these companies, Taz, they do this for the purpose of notoriety, right? They'll come out with this massive announcement, this big media release, big shocking number, 25% down, just so they can become a little bit famous. Because you know what? If you keep announcing every year for the next 10 years that real estate's going to go down 25%, guess what? No one's going to remember the 9 years you were wrong, but they're going to remember the one single year that you were right, and that's how you're going to become famous. So for all the residential homeowners out there, don't worry about it too much. We don't have the same problems that the U.S. had, okay? The U.S. was suffering from really bad debt, bad mortgages, really, really low down payments. All those lending practices were regulated in Canada. I don't think we're going to have an explosion, 25% plunge. That's not going to happen.
And the lingering question is how oil prices are going to react to the crisis in Egypt. We're already on day 10 of that unrest. Egypt, of course, not a big oil developer, but the Suez Canal, very instrumental in getting that oil to us. So what is the worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario. So that's a key word, Taz. You were absolutely right. Suez Canal. If the Egypt crisis elevates and something happens to traffic in the Suez Canal, oil prices are going to go through the roof. My prediction is they're about $100 a barrel right now. They're going to go up to $200 a barrel. We'll actually double in price. It'll be one of the biggest oil shocks that we've seen in history if something happens to the Suez Canal.
Make it clear, 1 million barrels of oil a day go through the Suez Canal. That is a lot of oil.
Absolutely.
What about that pipeline that Canada-U.S. is talking about from Alberta to Texas? Is that going to ease the situation?
It'll ease, but it will not replace, that's for sure, because the Suez Canal is one of the most important arteries when it comes to the oil boom, and I'm afraid that, you know, Egypt plays a very, very important role in that artery.
So very much a geopolitical issue.
That's right.
Okay. Well, that is a wrap for Bontis on Business this week. Be sure to check out his website, nickbontis.com. Nick, thank you for your expertise, although we didn't like the news about the oil prices.
Happy Super Bowl weekend.
Okay. Thanks so much. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more news, weather, and traffic. Stay with us.